Hello friends, welcome in today's lecture. In the last lecture, we have seen the Servlet API and the javax.servlet package and some interfaces in the javax.servlet package. Now in this lecture, we have studied the javax.servlet.http package, use of the javax.servlet.http package and some interface of javax.servlet.http package. The javax.servlet.http package and javax.servlet package, both packages are important to implementing the servlet program. And in that both package, that is javax.servlet and javax.servlet.http are most important packages that containing the classes and interfaces that are required for performing the servlet operation. So, to perform a servlet program, we need two packages, that is javax.servlet and javax.servlet.http. In the last lecture, we seen what is the use of the javax.servlet package, and also we have seen some interfaces and related methods of that particular interface. Now in this lecture, we have studied what is the use of the javax.servlet.http package and some interfaces in the javax.servlet.http package, and also the methods of particular interface of the javax.servlet.http. Mostly the javax.servlet.http package contains the interface HTTP servlet request interface, HTTP servlet response interface, HTTP servlet session interface, cookies class, HTTP servlet class, HTTP session event class, and HTTP session binding event class. Means in the servlet.http package contains some interfaces and also classes. Here in servlet.http package contains the more classes, that is cookies class, HTTP servlet class, HTTP session event class, and HTTP session binding event class. But in the javax.servlet package, only one class is there, that is generic class, generic servlet class. Okay. First see what is the use of the javax.servlet.http package in the servlet program. The javax.servlet.http package contains the number of classes and interfaces that describes and defines the contract between a servlet class running under the HTTP protocol and the runtime environment provided for the instance, such as class, by the confirming the servlet container. So this servlet then work with a HTTP request and HTTP response. So the javax.servlet.http package mostly work on the HTTP request and HTTP response. And this package contains the number of interfaces and classes, and their functionality makes it easy to build the servlet. So this package provides the more functionality, and that functionality makes it easy to build the servlet program. Next, see the interfaces in the javax.servlet.http package. There are total 4 interfaces. First is HTTP servlet request, second HTTP servlet response, third HTTP session binding listener, and fourth HTTP session. So in the javax.servlet.http package contains the 4 interfaces. First is HTTP servlet request, second HTTP servlet response, third HTTP session, and fourth HTTP session binding listener. The HTTP servlet request extend the servlet requester interface to provide the request information for the HTTP servlet. So the servlet can read the information from the HTTP request using the HTTP servlet request interface. Means the main use of the HTTP servlet request is the servlet can read the information from the HTTP requester using the HTTP servlet requester. Second interface is HTTP servlet response. This interface can used for write the data to the HTTP response. So the servlet can write the data to the HTTP response using the HTTP servlet response interface, and that extends the servlet response interface to provide the HTTP specific functionality in sending a response. Third interface is HTTP session. The session data can read or write using the HTTP session interface. It provides a way to identify the user across more than one page request or visit to a website and to store the information about that user. So main use of the HTTP session is to provide the way to identify the user across more than one page request. Means user how many time can request a particular page, that can be identified using the HTTP session, and also website and store the information about that particular user. So HTTP session interface is used for visit the particular site or website, and one client how many time request a particular website or request for particular information, that can be stored into the HTTP session. Then fourth interface is HTTP session binding listener. This interface tells the object about its binding with the particular session. So HTTP session binding interface simply bind the particular object with the session, and it causes an object to notify when it is bound to or unbound from a session. So these four are the interfaces of javax.servlet.http package. Let us see all these interface one by one in detail. First, HTTP servlet request interface. The HTTP servlet request interface enables a servlet requester to obtain the information about a client request. So, if you want to obtain the information about the client request, that time the HTTP servlet request interface is used. The HTTP servlet requester is an interface and extends the servlet request interface. By extending the servlet requester, this interface is able to allow request information for HTTP servlets. The servlet container creates a HTTP servlet request object and passes it as an argument to the servlet service method. Means the HTTP servlet request object is passed as an argument to the method service or doGet method. See some methods of the HTTP servlet request interface. First method is public string get auth type. It returns the name of the authentication scheme used to protect the servlet. Second method is public cookie array get cookies. It returns the array that containing all the cookies object the client sent with this request. So it returns the information in the cookies in the request made. Means particular request related information is sent with the help of cookies. Third method is public string get method. It returns the HTTP method for the client request. Also, it returns the name of the HTTP method with which request was made. For example, get request, post or put, and same as value of the CGI variable, that is request method. So get method, it returns the HTTP method for the client request. Fourth is public string get header having parameter string name. This method returns the value of the specified request header as a string. Means the return type is a string, and it returns the value of the header field. Fifth method is public string get path info. This method returns the path information about the servlet path. So if you want to information about the servlet path, that time the getPathInfo method is used. It returns the any extra path information associated with the URL the client sent when it made the particular request. Sixth method is public HTTP session getSession. It returns the current session. So getSession method is used to return the current session. Also, the HTTP session getSession method returns the current session associated with the request, or if the request does not have any session, it creates one. This is the 6 methods of the HTTP Servlet request interface. The next interface is HTTP Servlet response interface. The HTTP Servlet response interface is used to formulate the HTTP response to the client. The response object encapsulates all the information to be returned from the server to the client. Means response object contains all the information to be returned from a server to the client. Means response can send server to client. First client request for particular problem, then web server accept that request, perform operation and send response back to the client. In the HTTP protocol, this information is transmitted from the server to the client, either the HTTP header or the message body of the request. So there are two ways to sending the information from server to client, either the HTTP header or the message body of the request. The HTTP Servlet response interface extends the Servlet response interface to provide the HTTP specific functionality in sending a response. So the HTTP Servlet response interface extends the Servlet response interface to provide a HTTP specific functionality in a sending a response. For example, it has a method to access the HTTP header and cookies. The servlet container creates the HTTP servlet response object and passes it as an argument to the servlet service method. Same, the HTTP servlet response object is used or passed as an argument to the service method or doGet doPost method. So the service method, doGet method, doPost method, all these three methods uses the two argument. First argument is object of HTTP servlet request object and second is HTTP servlet response object. The service method is used as a generic class and doGet doPost, these are the methods of the HTTP servlet class. Next is some methods of the HTTP servlet response interface. First method is public void add cookie. The parameter is cookies object. This method is used to add the cookie in the response. Means if you want to add the cookies in the response, that time the add cookie method is used. So it adds the specified cookie to the response and this method can be called multiple times to set a more than one cookie. So in the program you can set more than one cookie using the add cookie and we call the add cookie method multiple times. Second method is public boolean contains header having parameter string name. This method returns a boolean value that indicating whether the named response header has already been set. Means it returns the true or false. Third method is public string encode URL having parameter string URL. This method is used to encode a specified URL. So it encodes the specified URL by including the session ID or if encoding is not needed, then it returns the URL unchanged. Fourth method is public void send error having parameter int sc. This method sends an error response to the client using the specified status code and clearing the buffer. So these four are the methods of the HTTP servlet response interface. The next interface is HTTP session interface. At every HTTP session, the state information is gathered and the servlet can read or write this information using the HTTP session interface. And this interface is implemented by the server. The HTTP session object represents a user session, and user session contains the information about the user across the multiple HTTP requests. When a user enters your site for a first time, the user given a unique ID to identify this session. Means every user has a unique ID to identify his session. So once user enter into the site at a first time, that time the particular user have given us unique ID to identify his own session. And this ID is typically stored in a cookie or a request parameter. And according to that, the same user can enter the site more than one time. That time the count of the attended site is stored into the cookie. So the HTTP session interface is mainly used to store the information that contains all information about the user. See the some commonly used method of the HTTP session interface. First method is public string get ID. This method returns the session ID and it returns the string value, means the return type of the get ID is string that containing the unique identifier value. Second method is public long get creation time. It returns the time when this session was created, measured in a millisecond since midnight, for example January 1, 1970. So the get creation time, this method is used to return the session created time. Third method is public long get last accessed time. This method returns the last time the client sent a request associated with this session as the number of the millisecond. Fourth method is public void invalidate. The invalidate this session method is used to invalidate this session, then unbind any object bound to it. So these four are the methods of the HTTP session interface. So here we have seen total 4 interface of the javax.servlet.http package. First interface is HTTP servlet request, second HTTP servlet response, third HTTP session, and fourth HTTP session binding listener. The HTTP binding listener is seen. What is the use of the HTTP binding listener? HTTP session binding listener interface we have seen later. First, see what is the cookies class. A cookie is a small piece of information that is persistent between the multiple client requests. So a cookie is a small piece of information that is stored in the client machine. In short, the cookie contains the small information and that's stored in the client machine. A cookie has a name, a single value, and optional attribute such as a comment, path, and domain qualifier, a maximum age, and version number. So cookies contains the name, single value, and optional attributes such as a comment, path, domain qualifier, maximum age, and version number. javax.servlet.http.cookies class provides the functionality of using a cookies, and it provides a lot of useful methods for the cookie. So main use of the cookie is a cookie contains a small piece of information that is stored in the client machine. See some methods of the cookie class. There are given some commonly used methods of the cookie class is first method is public void set max age having parameter int expiry. This method sets the maximum age of the cookie in seconds. Second method is public string get name. This method returns the name of the cookie and the name cannot be changed after creation. Third method is public string get value. This method returns the value of the cookie. So if you want to value of the particular cookie, that time the get value method is used. Fourth method is public void set name having parameter string name. This method is used to change the name of the cookie. Next method is public void set value having parameter string value. This method is used to change the value of the cookie. Then next method is public void add cookie. This method is used of HTTP servlet response interface to add the cookie in a response object. So this method of HTTP servlet response request is mainly used to add the cookie in the response object. And seventh method is public cookies array get cookie. This method of the HTTP servlet interface is used to return all the cookies from the browser. So the add cookie and cookie, these two methods are present in the HTTP servlet response interface also. Next, see the class HTTP servlet class. The HTTP servlet class extends the generic servlet class and implements the serializable interface. So generic class is a main class and HTTP servlet class is a subclass. So HTTP servlet can extend the generic servlet class. It provides the HTTP specific methods such as a do get, do post, do head, do trace, etc. So see some methods of the HTTP servlet class. First is do get. Syntax is protected void do get having two argument HTTP servlet request object and HTTP servlet response object. This method handles the get request and it is invoked by the web container. And this method performs the HTTP get request. So do get method is used to perform the HTTP get request and it is invoked by the web container. Second method is do post having syntax is protected void do post having two argument that is HTTP servlet request object and HTTP servlet response object. This handles the post request and it is invoked by the web container. So this method perform the HTTP post request. Next method is protected void do delete having two argument HTTP servlet request argument object and HTTP servlet response object. This method handles the delete request and it is also invoked by the web container. And this method perform the HTTP delete request. Fourth method is public void service having two parameter servlet request object and servlet response object. This method dispatches the request to the protected service method by converting the request and response object into the HTTP type. So this method is invoked for processing the HTTP request and response. Next, fifth method is protected void do head, having two parameters, HTTP servlet request object and HTTP servlet response object. This method handles the head request and it is invoked by the web container. So these five are the methods of the HTTP servlet class. Next class is HTTP session event class. The HTTP session event class is notified when session object is changed, and this method encapsulates the session event. All the session event present in the HTTP session event class. The corresponding listener interface for this event is HTTP session listener. So the HTTP session event uses the interface and also it uses the listener, that is HTTP session listener. We can perform some operation at this event such as a counting total and current logged in users, maintaining a log of user details such as a login time, logout time. So HTTP session event can perform some operations such as the counting the total and current logged in user, maintain the log of the user details such as the login time, logout time, etc. See the some methods of the HTTP session interface. There are two methods declared in the HTTP session listener interface, which must be implemented by the servlet programmer to perform some action. First method is public void session created and second method is public void session destroyed. First method is public void session created. This method is invoked when the session was created. Means once session object is created, that time the session created method is invoked. And second method is session destroyed, having parameters servlet context event E. This method is invoked when session is invalidated. So these two are the methods of the HTTP session listener interface. And HTTP session event class uses the listener interface, that is HTTP session listener interface. And HTTP session listener interface having two methods, that is session created method and session destroyed method. Next class is HTTP session binding event. The HTTP session binding event class, this class exists in the javax.servlet.http package and its event can send to an object that implements the HTTP session listener interface when it needs to bound or unbound a session. So when a particular listener gets bound or unbound from a value within the HTTP session object, then this class is used. Means the HTTP session binding event class is used to get the particular listener bound or unbound from the within the HTTP session object. That time this class is used and it extends the HTTP session event class. See some constructors of the HTTP session binding event class. First constructor is HTTP session binding event having two parameters, HTTP session object and string name. This constructs an event that notifies an object that it has been bound or unbound from the session. Second constructor is HTTP session binding event having three arguments, HTTP session object, string name and object value. This constructor constructs an event that notifies an object that has been bound or unbound from a session. So the HTTP session binding event simply get the information about the bound or unbound HTTP session. So these two are the constructors of the HTTP session binding event class. See the some methods of the HTTP session binding event class. First method is string get name. This method returns the name with which attribute is bound to or unbound from a session. Second method is HTTP session get session. This method returns the session that changed. And third method is object get value. This method returns the value of the attribute that has been added, removed or replaced. So this function returns the value of the bounded or unbounded attribute. The attribute like particular attribute has been added, removed or replaced. These three are the methods of the HTTP session binding event class. So up to here we have seen the interfaces of the javax.servlet package. Then in this lecture we have seen javax.servlet.http package and interfaces. There are three interfaces. First is HTTP session, second HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. And also we have one interface HTTP session binding listener interface. This is the HTTP session binding interface. Then next we have seen the classes, that is cookie, HTTP servlet class, HTTP session event class and HTTP session binding event class. So total 4 classes of the HTTP servlet interface. So the javax.servlet.http package provides the 4 classes, that is cookie class, HTTP servlet class, HTTP session event class and HTTP session binding event class. The next point is how to handling the HTTP request and HTTP response. Many times we need to pass some information from a web browser to web server. So all time we need to pass the information to web browser to web server. In such cases, the HTML document containing the from in return which send the data to the servlet present on the web server. So to make the form work with the Java servlet, we need to specify the following attribute. That is, in the form tag, we have mentioned the method name, then action of the particular page. So handling the HTTP request and response, we have to use the HTML document because many times we need to pass the information from web browser to web server, and that's why the HTML document is used. That document contains a form and in which we return the data to the servlet present on the web server. And to make the form work with the Java servlet, we need to some attribute. So in the form tag, we mention the first method is equal to method name. This send the form data as a HTTP post request to the server. So method name is do post or do get. If you use the do post method, then method name is post, and if you use the do get method, then method name is get. And second syntax is or attribute is action is equal to URL or address of the servlet. That specifies the relative URL of the servlet which is responsible for handling the data posted from this form. So in the action, you mention the URL of the servlet which is responsible for handling the data posted from this form. The browser uses the two methods to pass this information to the web server. First method is get method and second method is post method. So web browser uses two methods, get method or post method. Get method send the user information along with question mark symbol called as a query string. For example, here the syntax of the get method: http :/localhost /hello user is equal to AAA and age is equal to 20. So in the get method show the all the information or value of your particular attribute. In the servlet, this information is processed using the doGet method, and that's why doGet method is not secure, because your all the information are present in the URL. So the get method is not secure as compared to the post request. Next method is post method. This method is most reliable method of sending the user information to the server from HTML form. The servlet handle this request using the doPost method. And in the post method, your data also have been more secure than the get method. Because in the post method, in the URL only your form name is there. No argument is displayed in the URL. But in the get method, all the information about the attribute and user information are displayed in the URL. These two are the methods to pass this information to the web server: get method and post method. Now see the difference between the get and post method. First, in the doGet method, the parameters are appended to the URL and sent with the request information. Means in the doGet method, all the parameters are appended in the URL. Like here, this is the parameter and appended to the URL. Your URL is http :/localhost /hello and next user and age. This is the your parameter. So in the get method, the parameter are appended to the URL and sent with the request information. In the doPost method, the parameter are sent separately to the web server through the socket. So in the URL, no parameter is displayed in the doPost method. Second difference is using the get request, limited amount of information can be sent, and in the post, using the post, large amount of information can be sent. Then third difference is get request is not secured as information is visible in the URL. But in the post, this method is secured request. So in the post, this is the secured request, and in the get, the request is not secured as information is visible in the URL. Fourth difference is the get request can be bookmarked. Means in the doGet method, this request can be bookmarked, and in the post, this request cannot be bookmarked. Fifth difference is this request is more efficient. Means doGet method is more efficient than the doPost method, and in the doPost method, this request is less efficient. And sixth difference is the parameter is not encrypted, and in post the parameter are encrypted.